Does it start? Okay. Okay. So, Aniket, thank you very much for joining Cafe Dissensus for this brief interview on your experiences with TFI. So, I've happened to read that you were working in Ernst and Young, and then you were all set for a promotion and posting to New York when you quit that job and joined TFI. And after that, and as a TFI fellow, you worked in a government school in Pune as a TFI fellow. And my question to you is, what inspired you to continue with TFI post fellowship?
Sure. So during the fellowship, with the 2 years that I spent with my kids, so I taught a bunch of 56 fourth graders. I stayed with them for 2 years and worked with them. And that experience in itself, I think I found very rewarding, and the impact that I was able to create in those 2 years, the time that I spent with them, showed me in a way how change is possible over a given period of time, and how to work towards putting our kids on a fundamentally different life path. But at the same time, it also made me feel like there was more work I needed to do as they were growing older, and that I needed to continue working with them. So 2 years sort of barely taught me what it means to be a great teacher. You barely scratch the surface in 2 years. So, and I was impacting one set of kids in one classroom in one school, and I saw the program manager role at Teach for India as one of the ways to sort of increase that impact and take it to about 600 kids from 60 kids and over different schools, and be able to use the experience that I had gained as a teacher in the classroom, and coach young teachers who are going into the classroom on how to deal with those formative years and how to go about the curriculum. And so I continued, at the same time, I continued teaching my own set of kids, and mentored them at a community learning center that I started for them. And at the same time, I did my 2 years as a teacher coach with TFI in Pune.
Okay. So as a teacher coach, what were some of your roles and responsibilities?
So I worked with a team of about 16 to 18 teachers in a year, and looked after their complete training and development as they go through the life cycle of the fellowship. So like I said, it was one of the things that I felt
fellowship is 2 years.
Throughout their 2-year fellowship, yes. But like I said, this was one of the things that I felt kept me close to the classroom. So it was a lot of hands-on, getting into the classroom, observing the teachers, meeting with them, giving them feedback, looking at their long-term plans for the year, helping them become better lesson planners on a daily basis, have quarterly or like other milestone conversations with them, develop assessments. So it was a lot of hands-on support and coaching with them. So that sort of gave me a great insight into how working with young teachers and grooming them to be future leaders and strong alumni for the movement post they passed, when they finished their fellowship, really interested me, that aspect of education. And so I spent the next year with our national training and design team, working as the training manager for child rights and community empowerment throughout our organization.
Okay, so this training manager is different from a project manager. What I understand is you were like a supervisor and a mentor for the fellows.
Right. So I did that role for 2 years, and then I switched to the national training team for another year.
Okay, okay. And what was your roles and responsibilities within the national training team?
So the training team looks after one of the most crucial parts of the fellowship, which is the 5-week residential in-house training program that Teach for India does when fellows first begin our fellowship. So that's a very intensive 5-week training program before you get allotted your classroom and get started on your fellowship and teaching, and get your own set of kids. So the training and impact team is responsible for that for running that training institute, and it also designs the curriculum for the rest of the year for different content areas, for math, for social studies, sciences, for English separately. And one big focus area for us over the years has been working with parents and trying to get better equipped at dealing with the instances of violations of child rights that we see in our classrooms. So this role really came about in an effort to try and find a solution or find more resources around that for our fellows and equip them with the right kind of training and support for them to be able to deal with these on a daily basis.
Okay, okay. So I understand that community development is a big part of TFI. Can you tell us a little bit about TFI's vision of community development?
Sure. So we've always felt very strongly about working with parents. We've always, as an organization, believed that it is one of the most crucial things that a great teacher or a transformational teacher can do to be able to fundamentally put our kids on a different life path. And that's always been one of the mindsets that we've operated with. But in the beginning years, where the mindset was really heavy, in terms of training, it was more of our fellows experimenting on their own by trial and error, like finding out ways that were working for them. And then over the years, we felt the need to put more concrete resources around that. So eventually, our vision is that we see our parents that we work with as partners in our mission to get our kids to where they need to be. And we also, in the longer run, much longer run, we see them as advocates eventually for our children and for their rights. But that's how we see things. But working our way, we know that's not an easy task. And given our scale, we have about 1,000 fellows on the ground in 6 different cities, and we're starting in the 7th one next year. And the landscapes in every city are very different, and the challenges each community faces are very different from city to city, from state to state. So understanding them.
Start next year.
So we're starting Bangalore next year. We're really excited about that, and we're looking forward to that. And we've been trying to be in Bangalore for a long time. It's a great city. It's got a lot of potential. So we're excited about that. Yeah, so
my next question to you is, like, that collaboration between students, teachers, parents, and the wider community has become a common sense in educational circles today. So can you tell us a little bit about the concrete steps that TFI has taken to bring about such a collaboration?
Sure. So we start by training our fellows, like I mentioned, as part of the Summer Training Institute. They get explicit training on how to run effective parent-teacher conferences, how to build a structured, resourceful classroom where you're producing resources that help parents understand better, become more active, take a more active part in their child's education. And as part of the institute, they also do 4 weeks of teaching in a summer school, where again they get an opportunity to interact with parents, host parent-teacher conferences, and learn by doing it. And then once they go into
their own classrooms.
Once they go into their own classrooms, each fellow is allotted a program manager, like I mentioned earlier, the teacher coach, who then helps them develop a more longer-term strategy for doing community visits, meeting the parents first, understanding their background, and slowly building a relationship, and using that in the classroom effectively to push our kids' learning, even while they're back at home.
That is, like, do you always, like, I know that you have TFI in different cities, so are necessarily spoken in that community?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Like, are the TFI fellows always, people who know the language spoken in the community where they are placed?
Not necessarily. We get a lot of young people join the organization who want who want to be in other cities or be in particular cities and go through that fellowship experience. So we do have a lot of people sometimes who can speak the local language, but for example, I taught in a school in Maharashtra in Pune, and I can't speak Marathi, and but it's one of the ways you learn how to still like um, build a relationship strong enough with the parents, and you learn and you get trained to adapt.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you when you were telling me about the concrete steps that TFI has been taken to bring
Sure.
about.
Yeah. So like I said, we begin with the series of training that they get in at their summer training institute, which is then followed up by support within their cities by their program managers, and then each city has a government relations manager, which is a person also looking after our relationships with the local government, and also looking after. We have community liaison experts also, thinking about how we are working with parents of that city and how we're doing conferences not only for parents but also for HMs, principals, other people we work with, and constantly playing an active role in raising awareness of bringing people together, sharing best practices on a citywide level. So, for example, in Bombay, what are we doing to change the landscape of Bombay, and helping our communities work? So, a lot of our fellows, for example, as part of the second year projects in their city, is the Be the Change project we do. They do choose to open community centers or work with parents on a project or a livelihood project, or where they set up women empowerment cells where they help sort of mothers, stay-at-home mothers, make extra income, or teach parents in night classes how to help out their kids with studies, or sort of educate parents themselves, make them part of the learning lessons in the classroom. So I think each fellow goes through a particular experience and builds their own strategy of how they want to go about building that relationship and leveraging that, and they go through that process with their program manager support and the support from the rest of the city team. And I think what's interesting is, like I said, the landscape is changes and challenges look different sometimes in different cities, and there are particular things that you come across, and that's where we think we need to recognize. TFI recognizes that we're a young organization, and we're still learning ourselves. We've been doing this for like 5-6 years now almost, and but there are organizations out there that have been doing this for decades and much longer than us and have a lot more experience. So we make it a point to go out there and speak to them and try and collaborate with people on the ground who've been doing this for longer than us and learn from them. And
Like what would be one such organization that you have in mind?
So, for example, in Bombay, we worked with Arpan, and Tulir in Chennai is another organization that we've had a very good partnership with, and they've helped us out with individual cases, tough ones that we've seen in the classrooms, or wider trainings for our fellows. And we always meet either individuals or local NGOs that are always willing to help and share their resources and what they've done, which is the wonderful thing about working in this business, is when people come together and can learn from each other. It's great to be able to sort of share bounce ideas of other people and learn from their experience. And doing trainings where you meet social workers who actually work on the ground, and we have been working with kids in juvenile homes, and they've seen these cases on a day-to-day basis. They've helped kids go through kids who've been through sexual abuse or other victims of child rights abuse, or domestic violence. These are fields which we don't we're not professionally qualified to handle. We're young teachers trying to do a lot. So we part of the strategy is to sort of work with the local organizations on the ground who have more experience and learn from them. And for example, and another example was in Hyderabad. We worked with a local organization called Voice for Girls that piloted their curriculum for young girls that teaches them how to deal with topics like menstruation or sexual abuse and be more aware of their body. And so they piloted that curriculum in some of our schools, and our fellows took their training, implemented it, got feedback on how they did, and then we shared the training with a sort of the wider network in the city.
Oh, okay, okay. This is really amazing. You mentioned a little bit about working with the local governments. Can you tell us how a little bit about your experience of working with local governments in your area?
Sure. So I can talk about cities I've seen. So I taught in Pune and worked in Pune, and I would say we've had a very long-standing and very good relationship with the Pune Municipal Corporation here. Almost half our schools here are government school. We also work in low-income private schools, but there's a heavy percentage of local corporation schools that we work in, and Pune is the one city that has also piloted the school transformation project, under which we have a bunch of schools that we're working with on providing training to other teachers in that school as well, and help with the whole school as one project, as opposed to just like few TFI
Oh, that's
classrooms.
interesting.
Um, but yep, since we've been here in the city for 5 years, it's great having been in these schools and having long-standing good relationships. It's we've seen these kids grow up, and similarly we have very good relations with our HMs, with our like I mentioned earlier, we regularly host like HM conferences where we get to see each other and share best practices, set visions for the year ahead for the schools, and share ideas with each other.
Aniket, my last question to you is, what are some of the challenges you have faced in trying to inspire and implement community development through the TFI model?
Um, I think that the challenges come in many ways. To say the least. Like we say, each child is a very unique individual. Each child is special in their own way, and every classroom is slightly different in that way. There are some characteristics, there are some general things that work overall, and then there are some mindsets that you're able to identify and teach young teachers that they need to operate with in order to be successful in empowering the community they work with. And there are specific resources that you need to give them. But then, like I said, with the change in city comes specific challenges. For example, certain communities in Chennai see a high percentage of alcoholism or alcohol abuse as a problem, as opposed to some communities in Hyderabad that face domestic violence as a bigger problem. So what kind of environment are our children are growing up in is a very important factor for us to understand. But as the city changes, as the landscape changes, we've got to balance out, what we know to be true generally on a bigger scale level about about community development, but we also need to be able to generate resources and identify solutions for what's happening on the ground, which is particular to that community, which is unique to that community or that set of people, because every community feels a little bit different, and you've got to understand what their culture is and slowly build relationships that let you be a part of it, and help them build a sort of longer term vision.
Thank you, Aniket, for talking to us. I think with this, we'll wrap up this
Thank you
interview.
very
Thank
much
you.
for having me.